Hello everyone and welcome to WWE Discussion. I'm your host and WWE enthusiast Dougie Doug. In today's episode we're going to be discussing Friday Night Smackdown, November 10th, 2023 edition. In this episode of Smackdown, well, it didn't have the star power on the show that it did leading up to Crown Jewel, but that didn't make it a bad episode. But it also felt like WWE was kind of rushing through some stories, rushing through some angles, if you will, trying to just get ahead. It seemed like they kind of like fell behind, were trying to get ahead for stuff. Now, some of it probably has to do with Survivor Series War Games, but some of it though, some of it though might not have anything to do with Survivor Series. So I guess we'll see how the stories play out, but it definitely felt like they were rushing through things. And with that, we're going to get right into the action, starting with Carlito versus Bobby Lashley. So this, and pretty much what happened after the match was Santos Escobar turned on Rey Mysterio. Carlito accused Escobar of intentionally leaving the brass knuckles on the ring apron, and to be honest, I don't know how nobody else thought of that, because it seemed rather obvious, that he did what he did. Well, this wasn't very slick. Escobar turns on Mysterio. After the match, Bobby Lashley gets the win, and this was a jam-packed segment surrounding a decent match. Carlito's singles return match was too slow, and would have worked better if him and the Almighty had picked up the pace. Now, Lashley was at least the right man to win, remaining protected. None of it mattered more than the aftermath. LWO is evolving, and it starts with Escobar embracing his best tendencies. Some of his best work in WWE was with Legado del Fantasma in NXT, and now he is stepping out of the shadow of Mysterio and going back to playing a dangerous bad guy like he did in NXT. Carlito has not been required in LWO, but he should stand out more now that Escobar is turned. So Carlito versus Escobar. So now it feels like it didn't make sense to have him in there before, but now with the story evolving the way it has, and now that Escobar's turned, now it makes sense for Carlito to be around. Dragon Lee versus Cedric Alexander. This was entirely a spot fest, but a fun one at that. Alexander's high impact offense was especially a joy to watch, as it has been too long since he's had an opportunity to show out. The match was still more abbreviated than it needed to be. Both men had potential to do more than just look impressively athletic. At the very least, they showed how smooth Dragon is, while reminding fans that Alexander still has some serious untapped potential. LA Knight versus Grayson Waller, and WWE made sure to keep Knight hot throughout the segment. He still looks like a world beater and could challenge that at the tables again sooner rather than later, although it is unlikely that the next time Roman Reigns defends his title, it will be against LA Knight. Waller was a capable foil to the megastar and a solid performance, and while this probably could have been trimmed down a bit, the two worked well together in the ring and on the mic. KO was also a fun addition on commentary throughout the match and throughout the night to elevate the action and his growing rivalry with the Aussie. Unfortunately, though, that came at he tried to make some jokes at the expense of Waller Theory, and then that led to Waller Theory retaliating, and then Kevin Owens retaliating to them retaliated, and then Kevin Owens getting suspended, not for getting the tie wet, but because he broke Aldis' rule, no physicality, which was a dumb rule to begin with. I don't quite understand it, but I guess you can't have the commentators getting physical, which also doesn't make any sense because Kevin Owens is an active competitor. I don't know, the logistics don't quite match up for me. Main event, Damage Control versus Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair, and Asuka, and the main event never became what it could have been with the talent involved, but this was more about the angle or the story than it was the actual match. Now, it might have been somewhat predictable that Asuka would return given her history with Zayn and Sky, but it was still a great moment. The Empress of Tomorrow makes Damage Control truly look dangerous. And since Bailey first brought together this table, the group has never been as dominant as they could be or should have been. The role model may not have a place long term in the group, but she has finally seen her vision realized. The assemblage of stars could genuinely dominate the women's division at the level of the Bloodline or Judgment Day. Make sure you actually pull lessons from those two factions and not copy paste main lesson being overexposure. If the plan becomes War Games, then Damage Control has to win this time, otherwise what the hell are you doing? In conclusion, after a star-studded month of SmackDown featuring Roman Reigns, John Cena, and Logan Paul, it felt like WWE had scaled back on the roster for this week. Now that might have been to give talent time to rest after overseas travel, which maybe it's true, but also too, you had superstars who competed at Saudi Arabia showing up for Monday Night Raw, and that was much closer than Friday night. Nonetheless, this week's episode did not follow up nearly enough from Crown Jewel. WWE has teased that Cena might retire after his loss to Solo Sikoa, but he still is scheduled. But he is scheduled for WrestleMania 40 appearance according to the internet, although it's unconfirmed if that's a match or a segment. And the head of the table continues dominant reign as the top world champion in WWE, yet no Bloodline members appeared live. Solo Sikoa will be on next week. Jimmy Uso will be competing against LA Knight next week, and Roman Reigns will be back in hibernation. The onus was put on the limited roster to deliver a show that felt big, but ended up settling for overlong segments across the card. Damage Control was more interesting than ever, but the follow-up and Asuka turn could have been handled over multiple weeks rather than rushing everything together in one night. LWO has split in a way that should benefit the talent, but just like with Asuka and Damage Control, that one came off rushed as well. Santos Escobar turning the moment suspicion was thrown at him. Well, pretty much he kind of rushed to a story right there. He rushed to the story right there. This is all to say that WWE did enough with the talent on hand to deliver a solid show, but never did enough to create never did enough for the moment. Survivor Series far more imminent on Raw than on SmackDown. While each individual segment was solid enough, the overall impact was less than some of those parts. At least the product is headed in a better direction for the stars of the blue brand. And with that will conclude this episode of the discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.